Hi, this is Jim Rapon with Coldwell Banker Danforth. I'm a real estate broker here in Seattle, and welcome to Seattle Real Estate Chat. I'm joined today with my co-host, Rhonda Porter. Rhonda, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Jim. I'm Rhonda Porter. I'm a licensed loan officer with Mortgage Master Service Corporation, and I'm also author of the blog, The Mortgage Porter.
And this is our first edition, episode 58 of the year 2017. We've been doing these off and on for, gosh, what's it been, 2 or 3 years now?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, kind of in a little bit irregular basis, but once or twice a month is common for what we do on these. And our objective is just to have a little chat with everybody about what's going on in the real estate market in Seattle. Obviously, Rhonda, being in the mortgage industry, has much more handle on things going on with mortgage rates and financing and those issues. I, being a real estate broker, maybe have more knowledge about what's going on in the market in terms of availability of properties and what's the trends are for in sales and that kind of thing. So without further ado, we thought we'd start this year with a little bit of talking about kind of what's been going on in the last year and what we anticipate to happen this coming year. So as everybody who's been paying anything attention to the market knows, or been living under a rock if you don't, is that the Seattle real estate market has been very hot, frenetically hot for at least a couple of years now. And so many homes, I would venture to say most homes that are priced right end up with multiple offers and going over their original list price. So that is sort of the standard now, is that when a property is listed for a price, that the broker sets up a period where people can preview the home, pre-inspect the home if they wish, and then a date that they'll review offers, and then the seller can pick the best and negotiate to get the best deal they can for their home. Makes it tough for buyers. It's a very competitive market. They have to be pretty thick-skinned and willing to work pretty hard and step up to the plate and not have an expectation that they're going to get a super deal discounted from the list price, or they will be wandering in the wilderness for a very long time. So that being said, let's talk a little bit about what the predictions are. With the growth that we've been seeing in Seattle, there's actually a pretty wide consensus that the rate of appreciation will slow down in Seattle. Not that it'll stop, and it's not going to be backsliding and going into some sort of a recessionary thing like we saw in 2007, 2008, that kind of thing, but more of a slowing down of, instead of 8, 10, 15% growth a year, maybe 3, 4, 5% growth a year. But that's just in the core of Seattle, where we're already seeing a median price of between $650,000 and $750,000 as a median price. It's more to do with the outlying areas. Those areas is where you're going to see the real growth. So Forbes listed Kent. I don't know if you knew this, Rhonda, but Kent is listed as the 4th fastest growing medium city in America, with an anticipated growth of over 33% for next year.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, and you're actually located near Kent, right?
Sitting in Kent right now.
So you may see a lot of your clientele coming from right out your backyard, whereas before it was probably more widespread. That should be a very fast growing area. But all of the outlying areas are showing a good bit of growth. And perhaps I could show you that in a Seattle Times article that I was just looking at. Let me see if I could share this. It always takes me a second to put these on screen. Please bear with me. Here it is. There we go. I'm hoping everybody can see that. Can you see that, Rhonda?
I can.
Okay. All right. So this was an article in the Seattle Times January 5th, so just a week or so ago. And they talk about the appreciation in different areas. And here you can see where Seattle is at a much lower percentage of sales than the other areas. And that will probably be reflected in the next year or so in these appreciated rates. This little chart, which is pretty interesting, blue being percent of change less than 0% or right around that. This from December of a year ago to December of 2016. And the areas that are the dark purple are the ones with the most change. So here you see over 19% in Renton. Bellevue had a big jump. But all along the east side, if you look, there's a lot of those purple areas, and the red areas, of course, are also pretty hot. So this is probably going to be par for the course for 2017 as well. Outlying areas, particularly in the north and the south, but also to the east, we'll see a lot of growth because the prices are just that much less. This is not unusual that you see when you get a lot of activity in the core of an area that it kind of turns into a concentric circles effect. It just kind of waves of growth to the outsides of the market. This has been a very common pattern forever. That's just real estate. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I've got some other stats I could go over, but I wanted to give you a chance to talk a little bit about interest rates because for the longest time, it's been sort of a non-changing event, right? It's been sort of very low, still very
Right.
low, predicted to stay very low. And then we saw right around the election time some changes, and then since then some changes in another direction. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So rates have been recent times very, very low, where I think that a lot of us, and especially consumers, kind of complacent about rates. I mean, I felt like Chicken Little at times, saying they're going to go up, and they didn't. And even when they would go up, they'd come back down. So, but since the election, rates have been on the rise, and it has not a lot to do so much with Donald Trump, but more to do with that a Republican is going to be in office again, and so the markets like that, and so rates are reacting accordingly. So you've probably noticed too that not just that rates have gone up, but that the the Dow has been bumping and beating highs as well. So when the stock market does better and is improved, rates deteriorate, and so they did get, oh man, I think we were like at mid fours is where we jumped up to at the highest point. And
Shall I put up that chart you shared with me?
great, thank you. So the chart that Jim's going to put up is one that Freddie Mac puts out every week, and they put it out on Thursdays, and this is their prime mortgage market survey. It comes out every Thursday, and it shows you what the average rates were for the previous week for conventional mortgages. So and conforming mortgages. So so you can see where it peaked up, where it started to take off right in early November, and where it reached a high point. And now they're starting to come back down a bit, but I don't expect them to go back down to a 3% range. I think we're going to stay in the fours. We might get to high threes, but the average rates for the week before last Thursday, it's kind of confusing to say, was 4.12 for a 30-year fix, and that's based on paying a half-point discount. That doesn't include closing costs or anything like that. So so again, I think that what we're going to see is rates bouncing around probably at this level, and that if we see signs of inflation, we'll see rates go up, and because inflation impacts bonds negatively. But it'll be interesting to see what they do. But my prediction is that we're going to see rates around, I'm going to say, the 4 to 5% range.
So yeah, and I think this is fascinating that it had this, for once in a very long time, this real weird blip. But it seems to be that there was kind of a shock after the election of, oh my gosh, we didn't expect this. And that just created all this uncertainty, which pushed it. And then once people settled down and went, well, actually, this is typically when Republicans come into power and they deregulate, there's a lot of business activity. And so maybe it's not going to be so bad. And yet we're probably not going to see a rush of inflation. We may see some, but not a rush of inflation. So people calm down. That's what markets like, is calmness. And
Yeah.
so then it went the other direction a little bit. And like you said, it probably is not going to do that dramatically. We are probably looking at on a long-term basis, a pretty steady trend up. But at least now it doesn't look like it's going to be jarring unless something else happens. Who knows?
Right.
It's unpredictable here. But yeah, I find that to be quite interesting. I'm more curious also about, and maybe you can shed some light, what you anticipate in terms of changing of new programs. I mean, FHA is one of those things that kind of on the hot seat with the Republicans. I mean, uh, how is that going to be run? Are they looking at privatizing that? And
Yeah.
what and also, if they don't, what kind of new programs would you anticipate might roll out, or changes to existing programs?
FHA is going to be really interesting. I mean, especially with having Ben Carson running HUD, which that was kind of a surprise to me. But so we'll see what's going to happen there. They just reduced the annual mortgage insurance by 25 basis points on all FHA loans, forward loans, not the reverse mortgages. But and it was done by the his name, I'm blanking out on it, but the by the HUD chairperson who was exiting. So he did it like almost one of his last days in office. Grants this big, gift of reducing the mortgage insurance, and Ben Carson's already saying, I gotta check this out and see if we have Republicans still want to continue on with this and keep this cut in mortgage insurance premiums. So it was kind of a political move to get in some, good stuff. Which I love seeing the mortgage insurance going down. I mean, as long as FHA is being fully funded, it's great to help out the consumers with that. So
that was kind of high anyway, wasn't it? It had gone up to what? It was like, it's what, 2.5% or something? Or
it is. Well, there's the upfront mortgage insurance premium, which is 1.75% of the loan amount, which is typically financed. And then there's the annual mortgage insurance, which is part of the payment. So they basically pay that monthly. It's been 0.85 basis points if you do minimum down for FHA, and so now it's being reduced to 0.60.
So what will that mean to the average borrower? Most people don't know basis points and all that. In terms of what their payments will be, how much will that have added, or in this case, taken away from their monthly payment because of the mortgage insurance part?
It's going to depend on their loan amount, on how much, but it helps. I mean, every little bit helps. Mm-hmm. So,
okay.
Yeah. So that's a positive. It'll be interesting to see. FHA I think needed to do something because conventional mortgages. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have really revamped their minimum down programs too. And if borrowers qualify for those, and typically with those you need to be under certain income limits, or the property needs to be in a area where it's qualified, but then they get reduced mortgage insurance to where that looks like more of a benefit than FHA. So it's really kind of, where FHA does not have an income limit. So like that's one advantage for FHA over the other programs. But so we'll see how that goes.
And the minimum down payments was still like 3% for FHA, 5% for conventional, and in general?
3.5 for FHA and 3 for conventional.
Oh, 3 for conventional. So then they become very competitive, even out of cost out of pocket for first-time buyers or people who are looking for those kind of loans.
Right. Yeah. So borrowers should, if you're getting ready to buy a home, or home buyers should really compare all the programs and see which ones make the most sense.
Any news on the jumbo front? What's going on with that at all?
It's just jumbo mortgages. Nothing new that I can think of. I mean, they're still the same program. Now, one thing that is, I can't remember if we talked about this before or not, but the conforming loan amounts have been raised, as well as FHA, to up in the Seattle area, it's $592, $250. So that helps, keep people out of the jumbo market and stay, in conforming or FHA.
Right. That happened, in November-ish, something like that?
It was announced in November, yes, but it's effective for 2017.
Right. And that actually, wasn't that also true for Pierce and Snohomish as well?
Right,
so
correct.
So given the pricing of homes in those markets, I mean, median home in Seattle, $750-ish in the center versus $350, $450. Those are the homes that are really going to be able to take advantage of this, right?
Right. Oh, I agree. So, and there's nothing wrong with the jumbo loan. It's just that, the underwriting tends to be a little more scrutinized. And so it's a lot easier to underwrite and close on a conventional FHA mortgage.
Yeah. Well, great. That was kind of all I wanted to see us get accomplished at this first podcast. But I think we're looking at a pretty strong year. There are, for once, I wanted to mention, there are a number of condominium developments that should be coming online in downtown Seattle this coming year. I think 7 or 8. Still the vast majority of new construction multifamily is apartments, but we're starting to see more condominiums. There is a huge pent-up demand for that. So that should help a little bit. But we're also going to see a continued influx of high-tech workers. You probably heard the announcement of Amazon hiring 100,000 people in the next 18 months. Not many of those will be coming to Seattle, but some of them will. And also, I think I wrote an article a couple days ago about how both Apple and Facebook are doubling down on the number of employees they want to have in Seattle by the end of next year. So, and Google's continuing to grow as well. So you're going to be seeing just kind of a more of the Silicon Valley kind of making a shift up here. I think just because while it's expensive here, it's even more expensive there, and while it's regulated here, it's even more regulated there, and so on and so forth. There may be kind of a pushback, and here's where I could see a negative projection with the new administration. There is a possibility that Jeff Sessions is not a big fan of Microsoft or Amazon, and particularly H-1B visa, those foreign workers, wanting to see more of an effort on the high-tech industry's part of trying to find U.S. workers for those positions, rather than taking the easy way out of getting cheaper labor from overseas that's highly educated. Problem is, it's tough to find the educated level that they're looking for. And so I don't know how that's all going to pan out, but I could see that being a potential blip in the horizon. But in terms of construction in the pipeline, we have several large-scale projects too that I think are worth mentioning. So the Trump effect, if you will, that is probably going to be most prevalent in our region is the construction industry. So we have the new convention center, we have the light rail project. Very likely we'll have some stadium work being done. That's still kind of getting started, but and the finishing up of the Bertha and Brenda tunnels, to all that kind of stuff. So there are a number of large-scale projects going on here. SeaTac too, I believe, has got some large-scale projects going on. So I think you take all that into consideration. I know, construction workers, when I talk with them, they're like, yeah, I've got 5 jobs offers right now. If this guy doesn't work out, doesn't treat me great, I'm on to the next job. So, they are sitting in the driver's seat and they know it. And they're pretty high-paid, high-skilled workers. So that's all good for the economy to have all of that kind of stuff going on. And of course, all of that filters through into our market, real estate. Mm-hmm. So anyway, do you have any last-minute thoughts or projections you want to talk about for 2017?
Well, the other thing that I would add for the mortgage industry too is that we're going to see, and it's overdue, I think we're going to start to see some streamlining with the process as well. So Fannie Mae is out with what they're calling day one certainty. And we're a lender that we are signing up for this program. And it's going to, the biggest thing that it does for mortgage companies or lenders is that it helps reduce the fear of buybacks, which means that they'll have more confidence in lending. So it's also going to help streamline with documentation, where now, like with consumers, if they give us like their bank statements, for example, and they're missing a page, and it might sound absolutely ridiculous. Maybe they just gave us all the pages with the numbers on it, but not the backside. But we need to have all pages of bank statements. So this will allow us to have access to their bank accounts and the statements that they give us permission to, and they do this all on their phone. It's very app friendly, and allows us to have access to those accounts. So it's going to streamline things a lot more for consumers, hopefully.
Right. That would be great. And I know there's a lot of scuttlebutt about FCPB being potentially scrapped because Dodd-Frank might get rolled back, but that's a total different can of worms. And if it does happen, if they repeal or even vastly cut back a lot of the Dodd-Frank regulations, that's going to have a direct impact and probably streamline effect for your industry.
Yeah, and there's some things that really need to be. I think there's a lot of good intentions in what happened and with the Dodd-Frank and with what the CFPB's done, but there's a lot of things that have really hurt consumers and really dragged out the process. So I would like to see anything that can be done to streamline things.
Yeah, I would agree. Things have gotten really stretched out. I mean, the red tape has gotten a lot longer tape. So be nice to see that shortened down a little if it does. So, okay, thanks everybody for tuning in. We will be back in 2 or 3 weeks to do another one. If you've got any comments, you can always email us or Twitter, hashtag SRE chat for Seattle Real Estate Chat. But Rhonda, why don't you say your website information again so people can?
Oh, sure. Yes. You can find me at mortgageporter.com.
Great. And mine is seattle-realestate.com. Thanks so much, everybody. Sorry we didn't have our lower thirds that had our name tags at the bottom this time. We should have that up and running by next time. Anyway, everybody have a great day, and thanks so much for joining us. Bye now.
Yes, thank you. Bye.